challenges experienced by South African fruit exporters at the Port of Cape Town over the past weeks has a major impact on various parties of the value chain. To give us an overview of the current situation and talks with government and Transnet, I'm joined by Wolfe Braude from AgBiz. Wolfe, thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks, Liz. Yeah, no, thanks very much. Opportunity to have a chat quickly. The overall logistics landscape has been very constrained, as viewers would know. For a number of years, it's been something that's been prevalent in Durban and Cape Town. There's the issues with the freight rail up in Richards Bay with the minerals, and that led to the formation of the National Logistics middle of last year. Presidency and CEO established this together, and the presidency now leads that initiative and has the full support of industry across a wide range of sectors, not just agriculture. But AgBiz has been very careful to make sure that the voice of agriculture and the space, the value of agriculture and the needs of agriculture are clearly expressed and located within the NLCC objectives and mandate, because there was a emphasis rather on manufacturing and mining, and which we have now balanced. Because, for example, it's little known facts that if you put together all of South Africa's agricultural exports, it is slightly higher in value than our automotive exports, and about twice our machinery exports. And if you even just take fruit as a sector, all the major fruit categories such as the deciduous, the apples, pears, plums, apricots, the table grapes, citrus, etc., if you put them all together, we're slightly higher than chrome or manganese, for example. And those are commodities that are central to the Logistics Crisis Committee terms of reference. So we basically have been using that to leverage our fair share of value and attention. Now that process has not yet fully kicked off as regards to Port of Cape Town and Durban. It is further advanced for mining, but we do expect good things from it. It's a very nice platform. It has a lot of accountability going up to presidency. It has a lot of weight and capacity behind it through the efforts of BUSA and the B4SA mechanism under BUSA. So we're very hopeful that we can use that, and that will allow us to, as AgBiz, promote the voice and needs of agriculture clearly in logistics, both on railroad and in ports, and all three. But coming to ports, I think that your original question going to Cape Town, we can have a look at that situation there. It is most definitely problematic. In fact, it's beyond problematic. It's a full-blown crisis. Unfortunately, we're in about the fourth year of difficulties at Cape Town Port. Interesting enough, before this, let's say 5-6 years ago, the port is actually functioning very well and ranked much higher in global rankings. Now it's unfortunately slipped really far down towards almost the bottom of the rankings. It's deteriorated further over the last 2 seasons. And this season, unfortunately, has been almost amongst the worst season we've experienced. We're now into the second month of really the peak season for table grapes, stone fruits, apples and pears coming online. The volumes are growing significantly. We've actually had very good harvests. As you would know, the weather has been great. We've come out of very good rainfall and etc. Managed to escape significant damage from the weather. And in fact, the export volumes across most of those fruit categories are up, in many of them over 10%, sometimes 15% increase in volume. So this all ramps up as you get to November and December and through January, February, March. And it really is an issue.
What were the losses in 2023? Won't you share some figures with us?
Yeah, last year, the estimations are, the numbers are quite significant. You're talking about 600 million for table grapes, about 1.5 billion for deciduous fruit, and even citrus in terms of the logistics costs to truck fruits and move it between ports, probably just over 200 million. So it's significant losses. You're talking about the third year of such losses. So you're talking about people whose Solvency is increasingly under strain, because of course these losses are not incurred by, let's say, 50 giant suppliers or fruit farms. These are thousands of growers. Some are small, some are medium, some have just entered the industry, some are emerging growers. And people have different debt levels and sustainability levels in terms of what they can absorb in terms of losses. So you put a large segment of the industry at risk in every single one of these fruit commodities when you take these repeated hits year after year after year, because of course fruit is you grow it throughout the season, you harvest it, you sell it, you have one chance to get your full crop out into your premium export markets in the EU, the UK, and the US, and in Asia. And then you're done. And if it doesn't work, there is no cake weer in a few months' time. You've got to start all over again.
Wolfe, what is the current situation?
Well, at the moment, we have finally managed to. We're in daily collaboration now with Transnet officials at the Port of Cape Town. We invited Minister Gordon and the acting CEO Michelle Phillips on an industry tour in early December, and that was very helpful. We showed them just how tight the logistics type pipeline is for fruit. You get past, say, for some fruit categories, you get past the 2 to 4 weeks period, and you see a massive drop off in quality. And the buyers on the other side, they don't have the luxury to say, no, it's fine, just bring it. They do quality inspections on their side, and our current estimations are for about a 30% to 40% drop in quality of fruit arriving on the other side in Europe. There's also shipments going to North America. And so, your buyers on that side either find disruptions to their program schedules because our logistics. So we are scheduled to come in for a particular 2 to 3 week or longer period. We're not there. We just don't arrive. And then when we do arrive, we arrive with 1/3 of the shipment is gone. So they working on shelf sizes and volumes and how long they can sustain the marketing campaign. All of that gets massively disrupted, and they have to scramble for a plan B, which then places a competitor in our spot in the market. And plus, now we are late. We are overlapping another supplying country, another competitor country, because often what you try and do is you try and find a sweet spot where the prices are good. There's no one else on the table, so to speak, and you come in and you get your best value. Now we're overlapping and causing chaos in the purchasing market. And last year they said to us, this is really not acceptable anymore.
So what happens if we do not meet the requirements and do not deliver in time? Do we have insurance? Can we claim losses?
Well, you can have claims. There are claims that can be put in place in terms of some of the losses. But it is, in terms of claiming back from Transnet, that's not necessarily guaranteed. There's a very complex set of stakeholders and liabilities that you have to navigate. And there is some discussion in the industry about legalities and of this, because people are saying, look, if we can estimate, we're talking about perhaps 250 million already this season in damages and losses, and we can calculate back to which vessel incurred what total loss, then there should be a way to pin it in terms of liability to a party. Mm-hmm. And it's not a force majeure, because it's not really the wind. The wind is a bit stronger this last few years, but there's been wind for decades and even centuries. So it's largely equipment, to some extent, then systems and management, lack of spare parts, years of underinvestment, years of neglect of the port. And so at the moment we're looking, for example, we have about 5,000 reefers, refrigerated containers that have to be diverted or removed from Cape Town. The ones that are diverted have gone either to Wolfe Bay or to PE or to a shuttle service that is running across to Mauritius. So the shipping lines are trying to help, and we are working closely with them and Transnet to shuffle ships and shuffle ports. But of course, that even affects the terminal handling fees that Transnet gets from Cape Town. So everybody loses. But the potential damage is really significant to the industry. And we won't know for a few months how bad it is, but it is on track, on par, you could say, to equal last year's significant damages. One thing that we can say, which is a very bright light, is that we have some management changes at the port, and the collaboration between the industry and Transnet over this last 4 to 6 weeks has really been substantial and very encouraging. In fact, we now have a platform in place, a war room, for example, that will give us the type of daily operational control which we haven't had before, or collaboration, not control. And we really want to thank senior Transnet colleagues for trying to salvage this.
Wolfe, how does the export value chain work? How many parties are involved?
Well, let's start at the beginning. On the farm, the fruit is produced, it's grown, it's harvested, it's picked, then sometimes on the farm, often off farm at a large scale pack house. Excuse me. Then it's sent often in an aggregated or centralized volume down to a cold store, which will then store it prior to it being then transported to the port, where it's stacked in the containers, and those containers are plugged in day and night, 24 hours, to maintain the temperature, cold temperature. We have, for example, many of the problems of the port are problems that can actually be rectified. They are not, you could say, rocket science things. They're things that can be dealt with operationally. For example, the containers must be plugged in day and night. In some cases, they get unplugged too soon, and they stand for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours without power before they go into the ship. That affects the quality of the fruit, and also it sometimes breaches the cold chain protocol that our buyers on the other side require. For example, you would recall the significant issues with citrus and the EU around cold treatment. And many other destination markets have similar, maybe not as stringent criteria. But in that value chain, then you have the truckers who are moving the fruits between each of the points. And then when they get to the terminal, the trucks must then be offloaded onto the stacks. And this is where you get your heavy-duty equipment, your straddles, your gantries, that will move it around inside the terminal and give it eventually across to the cranes, and they put it on the ship. But when it gets into the terminal, that's then in Transnet's domain. And that's where the private sector involvement has traditionally ended. But now, unfortunately, our logistics chain, by necessity, must extend right up to the vessel. And that's something we made clear to Minister Gordon, that we, as a self-preservation method, for self-preservation, must be involved in the entire process from the farm to the ship. And we've been allowed to participate in those discussions.
So where are we now? How much time do we have?
Right. Well, our peak is going to run now until about March, when we're talking about table grapes and deciduous. You're talking stone fruits, and then also apple pears coming online and peaking. And we don't have really a lot of time because, of course, not all farms are harvesting at the same time and delivering at the same time. But as a sort of rule of thumb, you probably, depending on the fruit category, have 2 to 4 weeks in terms of perishability. Citrus can withstand much longer time periods, but with those 2 to 4 weeks, you've got to get it literally from the farm to the supermarket on the other side. So if you're, for example, here's a very good example. You had a ship sailing to the US just this week. That fruit on that ship was harvested in late December. So you've essentially just used up your entire window. The only thing keeping it going is the cold chain, the efficiency of the cold chain. But it means that still you're going to have this degraded quality on the other side. You'll lose perhaps 30 to 40% in terms of buyer expectations. Because, I mean, you as a consumer, none of us want to walk into a shop and see squishy fruit on the shelves, A. And B, you don't want to buy something, you bring it home, and 48 hours later, that plum or that apple is already going off. And you're like, what is happening here? And where did this come from? Oh, South Africa. It's really, really unhelpful. And in the past, these timelines were sufficient. But at the moment, it's really critical. This next 2 to 4 weeks is absolutely essential because a large chunk of the export crop is going to move through Cape Town, and we have to get it right, both in collaboration with our Transnet partners. And it literally is a scramble. Every day, things are breaking down. Things are not working. We are literally working day by day, not bubblegum string, but literally working. As something fire pops out, you try and put it out. But the larger constraint is that the equipment is just very old. It just keeps breaking. And so the type of investment that we need is going to be equivalent to what you're seeing in Pier 2 in Durban, where there's a private investor coming in starting perhaps in April this year. But there's no mention of private sector participation in Cape Town. But we desperately need that type of capital investment in Cape Town. And not to mention the management and the IT and tech expertise, etc., that comes with it. To be honest, if we look at Vietnam are way more, we could say, socialist in orientation in South Africa. They have privatized ports because the government there has come to the conclusion, this is not our core business. Let's get very good rental from the ports. We'd still retain landlord status. We still own the port. But the efficiency from the port will boost our entire economy and our GDP, and that profit and that GDP and fiscus revenues can go into social development. It's just a much more logical way to do it.
That was Wolfe Braude from AgBiz Fruit joining us today to talk about the challenges experienced by South African fruit exporters at the Port of Cape Town.